This movie's like my phone. It's the 40-year-old version.
Welcome back to HIVEMIND Unlimited.
And welcome to another episode of our movie series, How Did It Age? Where we watch older movies and reevaluate them with modern context. Today's movie is 2005's The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yes, Riley.
It stars Steve Carrell, and it's directed by Judd Apatow.
It does, and it is. It's Apatow's directorial debut.
Is it really?
Yeah, after being a producer on Anchorman, he said, wow, I like Brick Tamlin.
And that is
Steve
Carell's
character.
And then Paul Rudd's also in that movie.
Yeah.
And so he brought Paul Rudd over.
And there's a cameo from the guy who does sports. I forget his name, but during the
guy from the comebacks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the bald guy.
Yeah, it's kind of that whole crew of the early 2000s goofballs.
Yeah, Seth Rogen is in this movie, and he was 22 years old when they made it.
That's awesome. He wears hella cool band tees in this.
And he has tattoos. He has sleeves.
Yeah, he's sick.
Jonah Hill also makes his movie debut in this movie.
As well as Mindy Kaling.
From The Office.
Yes, it's her first on-screen appearance.
When did The Office start?
Right, probably soon after.
Probably right same time. Yeah. Okay.
This movie is successful. It has an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7.1 on IMDb, a 3.3 on letterboxd, and our guy Raj gave it 3.5 stars, and he said, here's a movie that could have had the same title and been a crude sex comedy with contempt for its characters. Instead, The 40-Year-Old Virgin is surprisingly insightful as buddy comedies go, and it has a good heart and a lovable hero.
And that's 3.5 stars out of 4 stars, by the way. So Roger fucking loved this movie. He really liked it. Probably gave it the same score as many classic movies.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's
close to perfect.
It's crazy to me as somebody. I have seen this movie one time, and I did not see the end of the movie.
Okay.
The first time seeing the end of the movie was
this Age of Aquarius.
Right. I will get into that in scenes. That shocked me to my core.
Like I said, it was successful. This movie only had a $26 million budget. Box office was $177.4 million. That's more than...
Which is more, yeah.
That's more than double, which is crazy. As well as Steve Carell, it stars Catherine Keener as the love interest, Trish. Who was kind of her first big splash. This is fun. She was in Seinfeld, the episode The Letter.
Yeah.
The one where she's an artist and George buys the art. And it's the famous episode because it's where you get the Kramer portrait. That is like big on all the t-shirts and stuff. The old couple buys it for like $5 million, whatever. Romany Malco, Seth Rogen, Elizabeth Banks, Leslie Mann, Jane Lynch, and Jerry Bednob, who is the older Indian fella.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his name is Mooj.
This movie's concept comes from kind of a failed sketch that Steve Carell pitched at Second City. So after Anchorman, like I said, Judd Apatow really wanted to work with Steve Carell. He said, we should do a Steve Carell movie. Wouldn't that be something people like? And they were sat down to do a bunch of ideas, and Steve's pitching him all these things. And he was like, I do have one more thing I was like trying to do at Second City. And he pitches him kind of just the poker scene that happens in the movie. And
where they're talking about sex and one guy's like very unconvincingly.
Yeah, one guy's like, oh, she was, screw me. Like she was nasty.
She talked some dirty stuff.
Yeah.
She was saying like, screw me, please.
You're definitely you're giving me the sex now.
It feels like a boob, feels like a bag of sand.
Yeah. And the other notably funny thing that Steve Carell really went all out for in this movie is the waxing scene is one take and real.
Yes.
Because as I was watching it, even this time, I was like, wow, he's doing a pretty good job of like timing and just like acting like it actually hurts. I was like, oh, because they obviously are faking this. Yeah. But no, that was they did it for real.
Yeah. In the Iconic Roles series that, I don't know, that Vanity Fair maybe does those or something.
Or Entertainment Tonight, maybe?
I think it's Vanity Fair, but... It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Either way.
Are you sure?
They do those on YouTube, and I saw Seth Rogen's and Steve Carell did one too, and they all talk about how that scene was real, and it's like crazy.
Yeah, and Romany Malco like actually had to leave the room because he couldn't sit there. And the girl who's doing the waxing, they like put a casting out for someone who was good at waxing, and she just said she had never done it before.
Oh, wow.
She had tried doing it to her boyfriend's back one time, but had no experience actually doing it. And when you do the nipples, you're supposed to put a little Vaseline on. Yeah. And she didn't.
It could have ripped his whole nipple off.
Yeah, it like pretty much did. He was actually bleeding after it. Yeah. Which is awesome.
Yeah, that is great. Also, I know that Jonah Hill, his cameo in this movie, his one little scene, is what landed him super bad. Yeah. They literally said, like, that guy in that one scene in that movie is so good. We need to have him in something. And yeah.
I was watching the deleted scenes, and Catherine Keener like goes at him in one scene. They do a lot of ad-libbing in this movie. She's like, sorry, you can't buy that here, little boy, or something. He's like, well, that's funny because I'm actually a man, and it's your fault that you'll never get to know how much of a man I am. He's like laughing through it.
Yeah, he is great in that scene.
It's awesome.
So
He's
funny.
trying to buy goldfish platform go-go boots.
Yep. He's like, I would just like to get these home and get them on my feet. I'll go first. I didn't write down that many lines. There are funny lines in this movie, but these are the ones that just stuck out to me as very funny. I don't know. I love, it's such a stupid line, but they're standing in the club where they take Steve Carell to pick up women. And Steve Carell is looking at the club and says, wow, this is crowded. And then Paul Rudd's standing next to him and says, yeah, well, $9 beer night.
$9 beer night.
That's just such a dad joke. It's so funny. It's like, well, yeah, they're here for the cheap $9 beers.
In 2005.
Also at the sex education scene where Steve Carell takes Catherine Keener's daughter, who's played by Kat Denning.
Yes.
Kat Dennings? I don't remember. She's from the...
Two Broke Girls.
Yes. Yeah, she's in a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
But she plays the 16-year-old daughter who wants to have sex, wants to be on birth control. Her mom won't let her. And then Steve Carell is kind of like, well, I can take her. I'll take her to the thing. He also wants to learn about sex himself.
Yeah.
So he's there and they're at the meeting or whatever. My favorite line in that whole scene is there's a little Jewish boy there with his dad. His name's Seth. And after Kat Dennings and Steve Carell have left the meeting, the person running it says, any more questions? And Seth raises his hand and says, do you have any extra large condoms? And Seth's dad goes, come on, Seth, you got a tiny penis. I laughed out loud at that part. And then another line that also has penis in it is when Seth Rogen is talking about the new hire at the tech place that they worked at, Smart Tech. She's like the hot girl that they hire. And he's walking past David, Paul Rudd's character, and says, dude, I think she's into you. And just as he's walking by, he turns and goes, yeah, too bad I retired my penis.
Paul Rudd has some amazing crash outs in this.
Oh, yeah.
He's the king of crash outs.
Yeah, I talked about it. I wrote a lot about it in scenes, but like, I feel like we should set up this movie a little bit more, actually. If you haven't seen it, you know, and you don't feel like watching the whole movie, essentially, Steve Carell is 40 years old and he is a virgin. That's in the title, but he works at a place called Smart Tech, and his co-workers are Seth Rogen, Romany Malco, and Paul Rudd. Those are the ones that he mainly becomes friends with, are those characters. And then the boss is Jane Lynch, and there's other people who work there too. They're all very funny, but he's not even like close friends with any of them yet. He has like almost no relationship with them, and they kind of bring him into the fold because they need somebody to play poker one night. And then they find out he's a virgin and make it like their thing to try to get him laid.
Yes.
And they try to teach him how. They try to like get him to dress different or
they
act
each have
different.
their own philosophies. Yeah.
Yeah, and Seth Rogen's kind of like a piece of shit younger guy who is always just trying to have sex. Romany Malco has a girlfriend, but he's always cheating on her.
Total player. Yeah.
Yep. And then like Paul Rudd's character went through a breakup, and he's like a sweet, soft guy who thinks love is dead. And he's like on the bench, not into getting women anymore. He just like thinks like love is dead, and he misses his ex who broke up with him 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he's like stalker level now.
Oh,
he's like making stories up to everyone, and like,
And I was saying he's like the sweet guy, but he cannot help being a piece of shit. Like he calls his ex like a bitch and a whore a lot. Like he's just being like, you think he's like the soft, sweet one, and then he just keeps breaking that.
He's a broken man.
Yeah.
Some of the lines I have down here, during the poker game, Steve Carell says, oh man, I love titties. In just the classic Steve Carell delivery. It's awesome. But then during the story of making up the sex story, he does do the crazy Asian voice in that. Not funny
Did
anymore.
not age well
No,
at
he
all.
says, love you long time.
Yep.
That doesn't slide today. When he's really angry, he's like nervous coming into work the next day after he's been outed as a virgin. He doesn't sleep that whole night. He lays down and he goes, it's not going to be a big deal. And then his eyes stay open and it goes from night to morning and he just goes, oh, this is going to be a big deal. And as he's going to work, he's like rehearsing how he's going to sound off to everyone. He says, I may not have had sex, but I could fuck you up.
Yeah.
Love that
He
line.
also like really hesitates on the up. He goes, I may not have had sex, but I could fuck you up.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love that. That whole scene of him doing that is so funny. I will say, like, one thing that I do appreciate about this movie, and I know I'd seen it before, but it really is not a movie I'm familiar with, like, a lot. I watched it when I was a kid, never went back to it, is Steve Carell is a very, very good actor and good at being this awkward guy, but it's also very believable in the moments, like, even that ridiculous poker scene where he's like saying all of these things and trying to convince them that he's had sex. It works at first, and everybody there is on the same page where like they start to side-eye him at the same time.
Yeah.
Because when he says like, oh man, I love titties, nobody really bats an eye at that. It's like it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And then eventually they're like, you're a virgin. That makes total sense of why you were being so weird. They don't draw attention to it, and it doesn't go super hyperbolic right off the bat. And that's one thing I do like about it.
Yeah, it's good. And that's like Kuda Apatow and just all the actors in it are just like all really good comedic actors.
Yeah.
I love when Bedknob, the older Asian guy that he's working with, that character is like trying to hype up Andy, Steve Carell's character. And he's like telling him it's not about like fucking, it's about like kids and pride. And then it just like gets out of hand. He goes, it's not about the rusty trombone and the dirty Sanchez or the Cincinnati bow tie. And he just like cuts him off. And like in the bloopers too, you can go look it up. He says, it's not about the alligator house fuck. And then he's just like saying all these crazy things. But I was like, Cincinnati bow tie, what the fuck is that? I went to Urban Dictionary, and this is going to get a little graphic. It's a reverse titty fuck from above. And so the nutsack becomes a bit of a bow tie on the sexual partner.
Ah, yeah.
So that's the Cincinnati bow tie. You're welcome.
Cool.
Seth Rogen at one point gives Andy the advice to not think about sex, and then Steve Carell goes into like this fugue state where all he can see is like boobs. Like the camera shots are just breasts, hot girl at a table, a bus with an ad that says like eruption on it is like following him, and then a bigger bus where the bigger ad comes. But I love he goes to the newsstand. First, all the magazines are like just have hot girls on them, and it's like Canoes Weekly, and it's like two girls like spread on it. It's like, okay. But he bumps into this beautiful woman, like a model, and he like holds her for a second. And as he walks away, he just goes, thanks for the dance. I love that line. And then like you talked about the bar scene when they're there. Romany Malco's character is trying to advise Andy that he should look for drunk chicks.
Oh, yeah.
All those lines, super problematic, have not aged well. He's like, you should look for the girl with puke on her shirt. It's like, no. But then like, as those lines are being delivered, I'm like, oh, here I go, writing how they haven't aged well. But I think part of the reason that it gets like such high praise from someone like Roger Ebert is that our main character in this, what could be this really crude sex comedy, does have the moral compass. And although he's like, you know, has this arrested development of being a late virgin, he's like, well, actually, I don't think that's right. And like, he is always like pointing out kind of like what's just there.
Yes and no.
Well, I mean, he does go home with the really drunk girl.
But also before that, like when he says he's looking for drunk girls and they say to like just use his peripheral vision, and he takes that way too literally. He's like bumping into shit.
Yeah.
Which is funny because he's like pretty sober. But either way, then he walks up to a girl and starts talking to her, and then it cuts to her and she's asleep next to a bunch of drinks.
Yeah.
And they all go like, nope, too drunk.
Yeah.
To me, I do feel like this movie has a very slight moral compass, but almost none, because that is the main character who is a virgin. They tell him to look for drunk girls, and he goes up to a passed out girl and is like trying to hit on her.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
Nearing the end of that night, they're all sitting around a table, all having a good time. And like Seth Rogen has like this striped penis, and he says it's Dr. Seuss's penis.
Yep.
And Steve Carell holds up a cake mold of a penis, and he's like, who wants dick cake? And everybody's like, me. And he goes, hey, look, it's Betty Cocker.
Yeah.
That's funny. When he's riding home with his drunk date, though, who makes him blow. She's like, have you had anything to drink? And he's like, no, I haven't had anything. So she makes him blow in the thing that starts her car because she's had a DUI in the past. He doesn't even realize. He's like, ooh, fun. He does it. Insane car ride. But she goes, your name's not Dan, is it? And he's like, no, my name's Andy. And she said, good, because Dan rhymes with man and men jerk off. And he was a jerk off.
Yeah.
I love that.
And that's Leslie Mann.
Yeah.
She is fantastic. She's Judd Apatow's wife in real life.
She grabs his ass. When they're making out. It's so funny.
Yeah.
He's like, your hands are on my belt.
She's also, I was going to talk about it in soundtrack, but she raps that Missy Elliott song.
Yes.
It is awesome.
When he finally meets Trish, the eBay saleswoman, Catherine Keener's character, he like does really like her. He gets the number. He's feeling good about it. And then they're all going out to celebrate. And he goes, so like, when should I call her? And Paul Rudd's like, well, do you like her? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, oh, definitely shouldn't call her. And then Seth Rogen chimes in with, when is the next Olympics?
I love that it comes out in 2005 too, because the Olympics had just happened. Yeah. So it's just literally like, they're like, oh, don't call her. I do love that the advice from all of them is just like, if you like her, absolutely no contact whatsoever. And the rest of the advice they have given him is just literally like, go up and talk to her, go up and talk to her, go up and talk to her. Like, you have to chase women. And then they're like, oh, you like her? Absolutely never speak to her.
It has so many timely references like to that era. And usually that like really sticks something in time, but I like how this one works. Like they talk about like Made in Manhattan, the Jennifer Lopez movie. They like the Coldplay references, the Olympics reference. It is like the fact that they work at like the flat screen stereo store or something. Like it helps this movie that it is really stuck in 2005 for whatever reason.
Yeah, like even when Catherine Keener comes in for the first time and she wants to get a VCR, he's like, oh, don't get a VCR.
Yeah.
Like you should get the one that can play DVDs. And he's like, that should be good for, and then she's like 6 months. And he's like, yeah, 6 months. Because like everything's moving quick, you know?
It is just like, I don't know, that like helps the storyline. It makes like a stronger setting for me. And it's all shot in the valley too, which is cool. When he does finally call Trish, he like makes a noise, hangs up. And then when he finally gets a word out, she's like, who is this? She picks up the phone and he goes, how are you doing? And like doesn't introduce himself. And then he says his name's James. And then Trish is like, are you a telemarketer? Do you work in a tall building? Are you close to a roof? And then just like rips into him, tells him all these different ways he should like end his life, how his career's low down, and then he hangs up and is scared. I just love that side context that she just hates telemarketers.
Well, everybody at this time did. And that's like when you get like my mom used to do that. Like she would be just like, she's not like vulgar, but she'd be like, do me a favor, lose this number, like never call this number again.
It was like low-key harassment in the early 2000s. People just, the home phone. Everybody had a home phone. So you could straight like interrupt family dinner or something. You know?
And also like caller ID was kind of new. So like before it just said like spam, probable spam, or unknown caller, people would answer every phone call.
Right.
So then they'd have to answer a bunch of people being like, can I talk to you about your this? You know?
I love when Paul Rudd gives him the big, huge box of porn and there's that slight nod to Seven. He's like, what's in the box? Like they make Steve Carell say that like twice, which is really funny.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, he's like, what's in the box, David? It's a great, I was like, oh, that's funny. Because Seven's like, you know, big at this time, but
6 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty fresh. So it's like, it was really in the zeitgeist. I like that nod. And at the time, I'm sure that joke worked even more.
Yeah.
And then Paul Rudd going through all the porn titles is just awesome. He's like, Harry Cocker. Just
Harry Twatter.
Yeah, Harry Twatter. And can't help but tell him stories about him and his girlfriend. They'd watch it and reenact every scene. Yeah. And then he shows him his own one, which is Boner Jams 03, which are scenes he was really into in the summer of 03.
He compiled his the best
mixtape. Made a porno mixtape.
Steve Carell has to explain that to Catherine Keener at the end of the movie too. And he's like, it's a compilation David made, I guess, of his favorite boner scenes. I don't know.
Elizabeth Banks is just like super into Steve Carell off rip. I'll get into it scenes, but when Seth Rogen gives him the advice and it just works, like for that one scene, he has ultimate riz. And she gets super soaked for him. But then she goes into the store where he works and he's in the locked room yelling and she thinks it's so hot. Like she thinks he's like this boss
like
who's
alpha.
Giving it to everyone. And she goes, God, he looks just like Luke Wilson. Just love that's her big turn on.
It's also funny because it's like the only person that you could rationally say looks like Steve Carell, but he doesn't really. But it's like it works from if Steve Carell was not Steve Carell and you saw him and you were Elizabeth Banks but not Elizabeth Banks, you could be like, he looks like Luke Wilson. It's so funny.
In that same scene where Andy is berating his coworkers, Paul Rudd like turns and Born Supremacy's on the TV and he goes, I always thought Matt Damon was a bit of a Streisand, but I'm really buying him as a badass in this total sidebar.
And I love that scene.
The outtakes for that are so funny. He tries like 100 other things, a lot of them very homophobic lines, but it's Paul Rudd turning and just being like, I always thought Matt Damon was a bit of a Nancy boy, but he's really kicking ass. I'm really glad they stuck with Streisand.
A bit of a Streisand.
Because that's like not a thing. Like, oh, he's a Streisand.
Yeah, just Barbara Streisand.
The back and forth lines when Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd are playing video games and they're telling each other how they know the other one's gay.
Yeah, people used to play this. If you're our age, you might remember this from like elementary school, but if you're not, this used to happen. You want to know how I know you're gay? But people would say that and then say another thing.
And the lines that I pulled from that are, you want to know how I know you're gay? Seth Rogen says, you like Made in Manhattan, the movie, which is just an obscure early 2000s reference reference, like I said earlier, it's Jennifer Lopez movie, chick flick of sorts. She falls in love with Ralph Fiennes, which is just a funny love pairing. He responds, you know how I know you're gay? I saw you make an artichoke dip in a loaf of sourdough one time. Yeah. And then the ending one is that, you know how I know you're gay? You like Coldplay, which is again another good early 2000s reference that just like is funny. And they're playing like Super Nintendo. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And that line also like lived outside of this movie. Like I didn't remember that line was from this movie, the Coldplay one, but people used that so much in the early 2000s. Like my friends would say that to each other all the time, and we all liked Coldplay. We liked them and still made fun of each other for liking them.
Some of my last lines here, when they're back in the club later on, Paul Rudd goes up to talk to the new hot coworker and he says, not gonna lie, I was a little reticent to come over here and talk to you. And it's just like, for him to use reticent in a sentence at that time,
he's wasted too.
So funny.
Oh yeah, it's great.
To, like, look it up.
And also, you don't really hear her talk that much until then, and then she has like the thickest Jersey accent you've ever heard. So awesome. I like laughed out loud when she started. She was like, "Oh my god, my ex-boyfriend, blah blah blah," like just goes off on this accent. It's so funny. And then they just start making out, which is hot. Another great scene and set of lines is when Elizabeth Banks does take Steve Carell back to her place, like that night. This is the night after Steve Carell crashes out with Trish because they're not having sex. He hasn't said he's a virgin yet, all this stuff. And so then he gets drunk and is like, I'm trying to fuck tonight. He keeps saying he's on the hunt for poon, which is hilarious. That whole scene, we'll get into it. But then he talks to Elizabeth Banks and she takes his shirt off and he still has like the shaving stuff in there, like the little patches. She's like, oh, but kinky. Like, I want to shave you. And then she's like, and you can shave me too. And then he's like, you don't look like you have much hair on you. And then she's like, you know where you can shave me? And then he's like, yeah, I want to shave your head.
It's one of the funniest lines. And then the boys end up coming to like save him or whatever. That is like, that's the turn too that I do like from these characters is once Steve Carell starts going hard and is just on this mission to fuck, all of his friends are like, he really loves Trish. Like this would be a mistake. Like they know this would be a mistake. So they go to like stop this and they come in while Elizabeth Banks is like blasting herself with the shower head in the bathtub and Steve Carell's just standing there watching. She also has ridiculous fish wallpaper in that bathroom, if you notice.
And like an aquarium. She has like a freaky house. Yeah. She definitely has, they don't show it, but she has a mirror on her ceiling, you know?
So the boys bust in. He's like, how'd you guys get in here? And Romany Malco's like, hit it about 8 months back, never gave the key back. He just kept the key.
He has a key to her apartment.
Fucking psycho.
Yeah.
And then like, tags in Seth Rogen, who walks right into the bathroom and takes his pants off, and she's like, hello. Fucked up scene. But yeah, that I hit it 8 months back and still have the key is just a fucking funny line.
Yeah. I'll start with a scene that I remembered from this movie, but did not remember it being as funny as it is. Is very beginning of the movie when Steve Carell's working at the tech place. Seth Rogen just starts talking about his weekend and he's like, yeah, we went to Tijuana, went to one of those shows. There's a woman fucking a horse. Not as cool as I thought it was going to be, you know? Like you're like, oh yeah, woman fucking a horse. Like, it's going to be awesome. Then you get there and it's a woman fucking a horse. We just felt bad for her. You know, we felt bad for the horse. Like he's just going like monologuing this like hilarious. It's so convincing because he is not enthused. No. He's like monotone talking about his weekend and it's the most insane thing possible. But it just very much illustrates his character as like a young person who has a group of guy friends who are doing crazy shit. Then Steve Carell responds by just explaining how he really wanted an egg salad sandwich and spent 3.5 hours making the egg salad. Then by the end, he didn't even want the sandwich anymore. And then he just finishes it by being like, it didn't have any bread. And he's like, so pretty good weekend. And he's like,
During that, Seth Rogen does like the thing, which is like pretty iconic from that movie. I love the opening scene. I think it's a great setup for our character. He like wakes up with the boner and he cooks like this tidy little breakfast. It's like a perfect omelet with like fruit. All of his cooking and his mannerisms in his home are like so non-bachelor guy. Like he's so like well kept and like still childlike in a lot of ways. Yeah. I think those are like good, just character kind of filling out for Steve Carell's.
I think he's kind of like auto domestic. Like that's the thing that I think when watching this back, and I'll just just say this quickly, is like, you know, he's a virgin and he's 40 years old. That's what you're meant to believe in this movie. And the way that it's set up, like Roger Ebert was pointing out, it could have just pointed and laughed at the 40-year-old version the whole time, and it doesn't really do that. But also, this is like before the housing market crashed and stuff. Like, to me, I'm like, this dude's got a nice house. Yeah. He's like seemingly just like a well-kept person, a happy person. He
has $100,000 of collectibles. Yeah. Every toy.
It ends up being $500,000.
Yeah. And has every toy a grown man would want. Yeah. Has a tuba. Has rock band.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, when he says he has a fulfilling life and then it shows him playing the tuba, playing video games, reading and doing karaoke at home, I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah. Like, that is so fun. It's not like he's doing nothing. It's not like he's like depressed in bed playing video games. He's like having fun with the things he likes.
The tuba and karaoke does come during his crash out too, which I think is funny. Like, he's getting rid of anger by like walking around his house playing the tuba, and then he's just singing fucking karaoke. Amazing. Also love his relationship with his elderly neighbors that live above him.
Oh, like, yeah. Aren't they in the movie? I really wanted them to be more in the movie.
Yeah, a little bit. I do just like when he leaves and he's like, Survivor, I'll bring a soda, like whatever. And he leaves. And then right as he pulls away, they're like, that guy needs to get laid.
Yeah. That is a great setup at the beginning, but awesome. I really thought that they could have been a good touch point for him. Because I almost thought like when he was starting to date, it's almost like when he's out there trying to like hook up with women, they could show that it's like straining that relationship or something. Yeah. Just slightly, like he skips Survivor. And then they're like, where is Andy? Like, where is he? You know, because he does have this nice relationship with this older couple, you know?
Yeah. You see a glimpse of Paul Rudd's insanity very early on with Michael McDonald playing on all the TVs. And he goes up to Jane Lynch and he's talking about how he'll kill everyone in the store if he doesn't get it to turn off. She's like, what do you suggest we play? And he's like, literally anything. Like, if I have to hear Michael McDonald for another second, I'm going, and just explicitly tells her, like, threatening the whole store. And it's kind of like, as a boss, she should fire him right there. But she's like, David, get back to work.
There are a million things like that in this movie too, where like literally, like when Steve Carrell eventually becomes floor manager, because Jane Lynch keeps promoting Steve Carrell because she wants to fuck him, which is so funny. It is a good role reversal. I will say it might not stand up. It's still like a little, harassment vibes, but at the same time, because it's a woman and it's Jane Lynch and she's very good at playing characters like this, it comes across so funny. He's a virgin and she just likes his body and is like trying to hook up with him. But when he becomes the floor manager, he has to deal with a situation later on, and like he'll go up and be like, what's going on here? And every time one of the employees is like, this fucking bitch right here. Like, they all just like talk like you should never speak in front of a customer. It's like hilarious. Paul Rudd films his own asshole on the TV.
That's the best crash out. After we can get right into the speed dating scene. They take him to speed dating. But while they're at speed dating, David runs into his ex.
Yep.
And freaks out, calls her a whore at dating. Is like, it's been 2 years. I love then she goes and sits with Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen tries to stick up for his pal. She's like, he's a fucking lunatic. I had to move. I had to change my number, all this. And he goes, well, I never knew that. He's like pissed. He's like, well, I never knew that. I only knew his side. And then as they leave that scene, Paul Rudd exhales a big thing of smoke and throws a glass in a plant. Like, he's smoking.
He just throws the glass over his shoulder.
He's smoking and drinking while leaving the daytime speed dating thing. I love that. After that scene, Judd Apatow thought Paul Rudd was too fat, and they shut down production for 3 days so Paul Rudd could fast. That's weird.
Wait, what?
Yeah. And then you can see it. There's a shot of him at speed dating, and then the next shot of him at the store, like the next like actual cut. Because then this leads to his crash out where he's selling a video camera to a customer. It's like, you can do whatever you want with it. Come back, baby. And he's like, you miss this ass. And he's showing his ass on every screen. But you can see his face in between those two scenes. Like, he's notably thinner.
That is crazy. For a movie like this, who cares?
So Judd Apatow's like, shut it down. Paul's too fat.
Paul Rudd is too fat. Yeah.
It's just strange. Weird little details you pick up looking into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, speed dating scene's iconic. I want to backtrack a little bit when he's trying not to think about sex. I do love the bus following him, and then there's like the little Yorkie.
The dog's it's fucking a beagle.
It's a basset hound.
Oh,
it's
basset
like a big
hound.
sloppy basset hound, like a little Yorkie. They had to get 2 dogs to do that, which is just funny to me. Like, someone in the Encino area who's got a horny Yorkie and maybe basset hound. That'd be funny. A docile basset hound. Those are dime a dozen. The horny Yorkie, they probably had to go through a lot of casting for that.
Right.
The club is like the horniest club of all time when they take
Andy. I thought that was pretty funny. I was talking about like to my roommate. I was just talking about it was like the way that this movie paints dating is like it would be the easiest thing of all time if you were just trying to get laid. And I think that's kind of funny for the movie because it's like the idea that Steve Carell has to be so impaired socially to not have had sex now because it's like so many people everywhere throwing themselves at each other.
Dude, the first scene in the club is a girl taking a belly shot out of another girl. Yeah. And then 2 chicks making out. I'm like, what the? This is like in the valley in the middle of the week. Belly shots at a club.
I also like when they retell Steve Carell's sexual history. Yeah. It's like the first nudity in the movie. And it's like the girl, like a super attractive woman with huge boobs. And he's supposed to be like a younger guy trying to have sex for the first time. And then it like gets awkward or whatever. And they don't have sex. But it's like hilarious to me that it's like he's gotten a chance with beautiful women, like not just like any old women. These are like supermodel looking women who he's been in the bedroom with and just blown it because he's just too awkward once he gets there. Yeah. It's so funny to me.
Yeah. Back to the celebration scene where they tell him not to call Trish. When they just start drinking, the choices of drinks is so these guys' like drinking habits are just hilarious. They start off, they make Andy takes like 7 shots. They just keep handing him. And then it goes straight to Irish car bombs. Like they're dropping whiskey shots and Guinness. And then it goes to like floral tiki drinks. Yep. And they're all like racing through a straw.
Yeah, it looks like fruit punch.
Yeah. And then they smoke weed out of an apple. That's like them turning up as hard as possible.
I like the idea that like they didn't have a smoking device because I'm like, this is before Seth Rogen has his like reputation. Yeah. Because I'm like, I did think that I was like, Seth Rogen's not smoking out of an apple. He'll find something to smoke out of that's not an apple.
Yeah, he'd have like a sick bong in his car or something. All right, iconic scene of the movie, as we said, the real waxing. That happens. All those scenes are totally, or all those lines after each strip are totally ad-libbed. And upon rewatch, you can see the person doing it is like, she's not even acting. She's just like reacting to these ridiculous things. Steve Carell does yell Kelly Clarkson during one of them, which is another tying you to 2005. Yep. He goes, Kelly Clarkson. Yeah. That's just hilarious. Kelly Clarkson didn't know that was going to happen. She saw it in the trailer and was like asked about it on the red carpet. What do you think about Steve Carell yelling your name? She's like, I don't know if it's a compliment or not. Yeah. It's like very funny. Yeah. And then the bookstore scene I really love with Seth Rogen, where Seth Rogen's like, just ask questions and be kind of a dick. Somehow that gives Andy the confidence. Like,
he's a different character.
Yeah, he goes in his like swaggy, suave like mode, and it just makes Elizabeth Banks like bubble over the pot. She's like, oh God.
Yeah, he's like, what do you like? What are you looking for? Yeah. I'm like, this is not in him. Like, this character does not have this in him.
Because he said, do you like to do it yourself? She's like, sometimes if the mood's right. And he's like, is the mood right now? And she's like, oh.
Yeah. And then they walk away and he's like, should I have asked her? He said, no, perfect. Get away from her. Completely different scene, but similar thing that I think is so funny is just it's a small moment in the movie. But when Steve Carell is telling Trish that he's fine with waiting on sex, she like can't believe it because, you know, he's a guy. Yeah. So she's like, wow, that's like, you know, whatever. She's like, are you serious? And he's like, am I serious? I mean, look how serious I am. He like flares his nostrils out and he's just like fully like changes his expression like that. It is so funny because it's so unnatural. They're at Benihana.
I love when he's about to have sex with Trish and he starts playing with all of the condoms And he like puts the Magnum over his arm.
Yeah.
And he thinks that's funny. He thinks he puts it on by blowing it up into a balloon and then like snaps it on his cock. And he's like, oh, that's a pretty classic scene.
I just didn't know if this came first or like I've seen other scenes like that. Like there's a scene in Wet Hot American Summer, but I think it might be the TV show.
Yeah.
Where maybe they're like referencing that, but like it's always like slingshotting it at your dick. Like you don't know what's going on. But I love also that I think that what you're about to say is it's funny that they all are piled up.
Yes.
And so then when Kat Dennings and her boyfriend come in, it looks like they've had just tons of sex,
yes,
but it's just because he doesn't know what he's doing.
And then her son goes, bro, you have to teach me.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And then the last scene I have down is I love when Romany Malco's character is showing everyone at work the ultrasound of his kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, look what he's working with. That's only 4 months and it's not like a dick. And everyone's like, every kid's got a big dick. And he's like, he's just so proud. And it's just the way they use the TVs in this TV, like, store is so funny. You get Paul Rudd's ass on it. You get Romany Malco's ultrasound. You get Jane Lynch's incessant Michael McDonald playing.
Yeah.
They put the porn on in the sound room and lock him in the sound room in the one. I think that's like a great utilization of the thing that they're selling constantly. It's awesome.
Yeah. I'll touch on some scenes that did not age well at all before getting into my absolute favorite scene in this entire movie. One, it was more racist than I remembered, specifically between Romany Malco's character and Mooj. I mean, they like go back and forth. And like, I guess like there's a funniness to some of those lines. Like some of it still is funny, but it just comes across so crazy.
Oh, it's just jarring.
Yeah. It's just like Mooj is going at him for like black stereotypes and Romany Malco's character is going at Mooj for like just any Middle Eastern stereotype possible. And it just feels so like bad. Like even like during the ultrasound scene, Mooj is like, now when he's born, is he born on parole?
Yeah.
Like shit like that. It comes across like that. That wouldn't be like that today.
Yeah. When he's arguing with Kevin Hart, he comes over and says like, some chance of drive-by with them or something.
Yeah, he says like dark and cloudy with a chance of drive-by. Yeah. Kevin Hart's cameo is hilarious.
It is awesome. I had to, that was like, I just a slick had to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, he is so, he goes, both of y'all.
That's your boy? Yeah. He's like, why me? He said, doesn't matter. He goes, aim high, Willis.
Yeah. Kevin Hart is fantastic.
He's in the Jamaica shirt. It's perfect.
Yeah, I do. Romany Malco is so good in this movie though. He is such a funny character. I love when he gets in trouble with his girlfriend and brings her into the store and because of the speed dating stuff that Jay himself was writing down, he has to pin it on Andy. So he comes up to Steve Carell and he's like, you wrote this with his girlfriend and and Steve Carell just goes to he's like, yeah, she was a hoe for show. And like he like just has to say all the things that are on it.
He gets too far in character after he says a couple things and she's yelling at him. She's like, you shouldn't be hanging out with people. He's like, listen, baby, I work with him and that's it. I know he's a freak. And he goes, hey man, you better keep your hoe on a leash, dog.
Yeah. And he's like, don't say that.
He's like, all right, that's it. Yeah, I'm not gonna let you talk to her like that. And he's like, he just starts like flexing.
He's like, get your bitch out of here. I also love Jay's girlfriend is the clerk from Superbad.
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed that right away. I was like, oh, that's like the lady who gets like the McLovin scene.
Yeah, who they couldn't describe as black.
Yeah. And then when Jay does get broken up with, Jill breaks up with him and he's crying to Andy. I love, there's a scene, he's crying, he's giving it his all. He's like, and then at one point he just goes, I'm cold. And then Andy like hugs him. They do have like such a sweet friendship because they're clearly very different. And Jay's not like necessarily a good guy. He's cheating on his girlfriend the whole time and giving Andy bad advice, all of that stuff. But it's just very funny the way that they become like, they both love the things about each other, you know?
I love Jay's line of, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think you a good looking cat. But I don't think anybody knows. Like that whole explanation. He goes, look at this. You think this was an accident? Everything here is intentional.
Other problematic scene that I do have to bring up is the trans woman scene.
Yes, the prostitute.
Completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's a scene that like legitimately if you cut it out of the movie, nothing would change.
No, it'd be better.
But yeah, and obviously I don't think they would do that now, but at the same time, 2005, There are a lot of movies around the early 2000s that have problematic stuff like this, but it is like, it bummed me out.
Yeah, it's just
because
pointless.
like even like the racism stuff, that obviously bums me out, but there's a way that everybody kind of gets it. Like they go at each other.
Yeah.
They are going at each other the whole movie. Everybody is. This is like a new character brought in to make them say a bunch of horrible things about, and then it's like a 5-minute scene.
Yeah.
It just feels like ugly,
Yeah,
you know?
I totally agree. The only thing that made me like it was watching the outtakes today, and they're just going through where he's yelling at all of them. And Seth Rogen says, "Come on, man. That cost us $50 a piece." And that, for some reason, made everyone in the room laugh. And in that gag, he's just like pissed that it cost him $50.
I'll tell you what did age very well. My favorite scene in the entire movie. Jane Lynch singing this Guatemalan song killed me. I was crying laughing. She's like talking about how she developed early. She's like, I had this body at 14. And he's like, oh, wow. and then she's like, can you believe that? She's like, my favorite of the men who pursued me was my Guatemalan gardener. And before the first time that he made love to me, he sang me a traditional Guatemalan song and then just starts singing it. And she's doing it all to seduce Steve Carrell after promoting him to try to have sex with him, and sings it so well and that keeps it together. So like Jane Lynch is one of my favorites ever.
Yeah.
Like Party Down, Jane Lynch.
She's got so much of that character in her.
Yeah,
in this
that
movie.
is that character.
Yeah.
She is basically Constance from Party Down.
If you've
in
never
this.
seen that show, totally.
Totally watch it. But singing that Guatemalan song, it killed me.
It's awesome. If it were to come out today, we'd have dating apps involved in some way. They'd be like helping them make a profile.
Yep.
Kind of deal. No one works at a stereo or a TV store. So I wrote that maybe they're baristas or they're like all waiters at a shitty restaurant.
Yeah.
Or something.
They all work at Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, something like
or
that.
they're all cops.
Yeah. Or half cops, half Planned Parenthood. Maybe it's a joint, does both. It's kind of like a
Barista-
Pizza Hut, Taco
Barista,
Bell, or whatever.
police.
I just said the dynamics of dating have changed a lot, but the core of the movie would be the same.
Yeah.
I agree, like the technology and stuff would change.
Of course.
Yeah, but the dynamics have changed too, because I think there is a lot of stuff here that, wow, maybe like, you know, we pointed out the obviously problematic stuff like racism. There are like slurs used in this movie. There was like, you know, transphobia, those things, sure. But also the actual angle of a lot of it is pretty like take advantage of people. That's kind of like the vibe is like take advantage of drunk women. There's a lot of that here where that dynamic is much more, for lack of a better term, like policed. Like it's like we kind of self-police those things. We've had like held the mirror up over the past 20 years and been like, you know, maybe these things are wrong, and that culture has kind of changed the way that dating works, and for the positive, in my opinion. And I think that would be reflected in the movie.
Yeah, I think to that point too, I think like male relationships in early adulthood have changed a lot in terms of like communication.
Yeah.
And what's like just been normalized or more encouraged over the last 20 years. If a group of coworkers that were kind of friends or acquaintances found out that one was a virgin, there's a way of going about talking about that is way more aligned in a social norm now than being like, dude, we got to get him some pussy. Like,
oh, yeah.
That's not the solution. People would be like, oh, there's a way we could talk about this and maybe like help him if he wants type thing. But that doesn't make a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't be a good movie. New movie. I'm not recasting this one. This movie's called The 4D Year-Old Virgin. It's about a 4-dimensional alien baby who was born without the ability to bang. The baby is animated, but voiced by Jenny Slate.
I thought that was 4-day-old virgin you wrote, and I was like, that's fucked up.
No, it's a year-old.
Yeah, but it's in a new dimension.
Yeah, it's 4D, so it's not as, a day is like 20 years in that.
Sick.
Yeah.
I was just looking up good comedic actors that were 40 that we could redo this with, because they did do the 41-year-old virgin.
Yeah, who was that?
I don't know. It has like a half star on letterboxd. I was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
But I think it's awesome. Jonah Hill is like 41. He's really close. And I think as this being kind of his way in, if they just redid it with him now.
Yeah.
And he was a 40-year-old and it was like they helped him build a dating app or whatever.
I don't think that he should be doing movies about dating.
No,
I think that's a touchy subject for him.
Well, no, it would be like, all right,
It'd be like
you don't want her to wear a bikini.
It'd be like a
but,
surf dating movie. Yeah.
He like wants her to surf in a hoodie and stuff. He's uncomfortable. Yeah, totally. That could work.
Yeah, surfing in sweatpants.
Pretty great soundtrack here.
I thought it was all right. Yeah.
I love the Michael McDonald. You hear some interesting covers, some songs I never even heard of. It's like one concert, whatever, DVD. My favorite needle drop is the Okabambo song. Hello, is it me you're looking for?
Yeah.
Love that. I love the believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
Yeah.
That's a Joey Scarberry song. And then I love Heat of the Moment when the eruption, like when he goes through the eruption billboard.
Yeah.
And that's great. And then obviously the big musical number at the end.
Yeah, which this is something like, no joke, I wish other movies had, and I have wished this before. I don't know if I've said it on camera for one of the How Did It Ages, but like, I absolutely lose it when something turns into a musical for no reason. Like, if it's just one time, if it becomes a music video for that song with the characters from the movie, I lose it. I don't know why. I think it's hilarious. When it happened in this one, I almost was like, am I dreaming?
Am I tripping?
Because this is like what I wanted to happen.
Yeah.
Is like, he has sex for the first time, they do the 1 minute later thing, and then he's done, and then she's like, you want to go again? And then it's like 2 hours later, and he's like, and then she's like, how was that for you? And then he just starts singing.
And the moon. A great song to choose too, Age of Aquarius. Judd Apatow didn't have an ending. He didn't know how to end it, and one of the writers on it was like, it can't just end with sex.
Yeah.
Like, that's not funny. And he was like, all right, what if he's saying Age of Aquarius, like as a joke? And they were like, perfect, let's do that. Awesome.
And we'll get everybody to sing it too. Paul Rudd obviously lost enough weight to be shirtless for that last scene. Judd Apatow deemed him pretty enough.
Seth Rogen's with Elizabeth Banks at the wedding making out. It's awesome. I do love that. It's like Shrek-esque.
Yeah.
You're doing the musical wedding scene where you get to see how the other characters kind of have found their new loves. It puts a bow on everything while maintaining a bit the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is just great.
But I don't know, I guess.
I put probably not.
Yeah.
Honestly, if someone was like, oh my God, you know what I haven't seen? Judd Apatow's first movie, 40-Year-Old Virgin, I'd be like, eh.
It was still better than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it gets laughs, but like, would I recommend it?
Yeah, no.
Probably. Honestly, probably not.
There's like 50 comedies I would recommend before it.
Yeah, way more.
But honestly, I was going in I was kind of like, ugh, we got to do this one. And then I watched it and was like, this is funnier than I thought.
Yeah,
for sure.
Apatow's great comedic director, became the legend that he is. And Steve Carell's great. And all the supporting roles, like we said, are really good. Jane Lynch has her moments. Romany Malco. I mean, there's some studs in this that are great. But yeah, I don't know. If someone was like, yo, I just watched it, I'd be like, oh, what'd you think? I'd be interested to have the conversation.
Totally.
But I'm not going to be like, go home and watch it. So
yeah, that's fair.
If you've made it this far in the video and you haven't watched it, maybe watch something else.
Yeah. I gave it 2.5 stars and said this movie about a lot of y'all.
I gave it 2.5 stars and I said 3 stars for Jane Lynch minus 0.5 stars for Seth Rogen.
You didn't like Seth Rogen in this movie?
That's not what I said. I just made a funny review.
What's funny about it? I don't get
It's funny because I gave Jane Lynch 3 stars, but I gave it 2.5 stars. I had to choose someone to take it away.
Okay,
I just think it's funny.
All right.
That's it, dude.
Yeah, spell Rogen right in the actual review.
Oh, no, these are my notes, so I don't care.
Okay, I was just
because I can read that and like pronounce it.
Totally, man. I was just letting you know.
Yeah, but you're outing me.
Oh, never mind.
Don't do that.
I spelled movie wrong on mine.
Fucking idiot.
Yeah, I'm dumb.
Right.
I'm a dumb guy.
That was 40-Year-Old Virgin. This is our movie series. If you want to know what movie we are watching next, become a Patreon member.
Yeah.
Or click the join button over on YouTube and become a member there.
Yeah, on our main channel, HIVEMIND, yeah.
And we post the movie we're going to watch at the start of the week. So you guys have time to watch it. And then come Sunday, after we've all watched it together, a little movie club, you can watch this with more context.
Yeah, all that stuff's right. And also Copes.shop for our HIVEMIND clothing stuff. And let us know what movie we should do next downstairs or on the Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been 40-Year-Old Virgin 2005. This has been Judd Apatow. This has been HIVEMIND Unlimited. This has been a good time. And this will be... See you later.
This will be... Love you.
Ugh.